Rain hammered the jungle canopy in relentless sheets, turning the ground beneath the soldiers' boots into sucking mud. Shells and bullets stitched the treetops, echoing like a metal storm, and the cries of 280 pinned soldiers cut through the chaos. Desperate and raw, Sergeant Emily Carter moved against the panic, her small frame carrying a medical pack almost as large as herself. Each step measured, each glance scanning for hazards invisible to everyone else. A young private stumbled beside her, wide-eyed, muttering a nervous observation, and she only nodded calmly, adjusting the strap on her pack and keeping her eyes fixed ahead. Untouched by the fear surrounding them, the mud-slicked boots of the men slipped and slid as they scrambled for cover, dragging crates of ammunition, shouting over the roar of rainfall and gunfire. Carter's breathing was steady, controlled, each motion deliberate as she pushed past the thrashing chaos. Feeling the rhythm of the jungle under her feet, the private tried to laugh nervously, a sound swallowed quickly by a distant mortar that shook the ground and rattled teeth in helmets. She offered no words, only the quiet confidence of someone who had done this before. Her presence, a moving island of order amid unrelenting disorder. Every sound mattered to her: the snap of a branch, the hiss of rain through leaves, the faintest shift in the mud that signaled movement ahead. Soldiers screamed as rounds tore through brush, and Carter navigated around them, slipping past fallen limbs and puddles deep enough to swallow a boot. The young private tried to call out again, words tripping over fear, and she bent slightly to offer a reassuring hand on his arm. A silent anchor in the storm. Even in the midst of chaos, her eyes tracked the ridge where the enemy fire was densest, and without hesitation, she pressed forward, carrying skill, courage, and calm as her only armor. Thunder rolled through the valley like artillery, and the jungle became a blur of dark green and brown, mud spraying with every movement. Carter moved through it with the precision of someone who understood the stakes. Every step purposeful, every breath measured. Soldiers around her ducked and shouted, fear etched in their movements. Yet she pushed on, unseen except by the eyes that needed her most. The scene pulsed with tension, danger, and raw urgency. And in the center of it all, Emily Carter became the steady, unshakable force cutting a path through the storm. Emily Carter grew up in a small town in North Carolina, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and the rhythm of life was steady and predictable. Her father, a Vietnam veteran, rarely spoke of the horrors he had seen, but his quiet routines and careful attention to his old M16 taught her lessons in discipline and courage that no words ever could. Sunday mornings were spent watching him clean his rifle and polish the worn metal. And in those moments she learned that bravery often shows itself in the small, unremarkable acts that nobody notices. Those lessons became the foundation for a young woman who would choose service over comfort and responsibility over recognition. At 19, Emily enlisted in the U.S. Army, leaving behind the familiar streets of her hometown for the uncertainty of military life. Her deployments to Afghanistan hardened her in ways that textbooks could never convey, with long nights in makeshift clinics, dust storms choking the air, and the constant hum of danger just beyond the walls of her tent. She became accustomed to the smell of blood mixed with sand and the sight of soldiers pushed to the edge of endurance. Learning to move with precision and calm under pressure, every patient she treated and every casualty she stabilized added layers to her competence, shaping her into a medic who thrived where others faltered. Her record carried heroic feats few would ever know. During one operation, she dragged 6 men from a burning convoy, keeping them alive for 48 hours with nothing but field bandages, a broken radio, and sheer determination. For this act, she earned the Distinguished Service Cross. Yet the mission was classified, and her name buried beneath layers of ink. A ghost among heroes. These experiences forged a quiet resilience, one that allowed her to focus on the task at hand without seeking applause, and to carry the weight of responsibility without complaint. Now reassigned to a new joint task force in the Pacific, Emily faced the challenge of being underestimated by fresh teammates who saw her only as another medic. Rumors circulated that she had frozen in combat or been demoted, and subtle dismissals from sergeants and lieutenants tested her patience. She ignored the whispers, keeping her head down, methodically cleaning instruments, organizing her pack, and preparing for the moment when her skills would matter most. Even in the face of doubt, her calm and professionalism set her apart. A quiet beacon of experience and expertise, ready to meet the storm head-on. Rain plastered Emily Carter's hair to her neck as she stepped into the dense jungle, each boot sinking into mud that threatened to pull her down. She moved slowly, scanning for hazards, and her eyes caught the faint glint of a tripwire half buried beneath leaves. Adjusting the strap on her full medical pack, she eased a small stick underneath the wire to release the tension without triggering it. Her movements precise and practiced. Every step was deliberate, every breath measured. As she advanced against the storm with a quiet purpose that belied the chaos surrounding her, the enemy fire crackled through the canopy, rounds tearing leaves and branches apart, and she counted the interval between bursts to estimate timing and distance. Her hand brushed over the M4 at her side, checking the chamber and sliding a fresh magazine in with the practiced motions of countless drills. Carter keyed hair radio, authenticating with the mortar team for an 81mm fire mission, giving coordinates in the proper code, and listened for the crisp confirmation of understanding, even in the downpour. She maintained the rhythm of communication, balancing tactical precision with her own survival instincts and the safety of the men ahead. Every sound and shadow mattered. A snapped twig or shifting mud could signal enemy presence or danger to her teammates. She navigated around fallen limbs and thick roots, keeping her body low and her pack secure, while her eyes mapped a safe path through the jungle's lethal terrain. The rain pounded on leaves, masking some sounds but amplifying others, and she used it to her advantage, moving in silence while the world seemed to roar around her. Her focus was unbroken, her movements smooth and controlled, demonstrating the calm expertise that had been honed through years of special operations, training, and field experience. Even when the canopy opened to reveal glimpses of the ridge ahead, the threat of enemy observation never wavered in her mind. She adjusted her pace, timing each step with the shifting fire and coordinating small hand gestures to guide unseen teammates. Her knowledge of the jungle, her weapon, and the mortar team's timing allowed her to move with the confidence of someone who had done this before and would do it again if necessary. In the heart of the storm, Emily Carter became both guide and guardian, a steady force cutting through chaos with focus, skill, and unwavering purpose. Emily Carter reached the makeshift CCP, the ground churned and slick with mud, and found the soldiers huddled under a tangle of tarps and broken limbs, faces pale and eyes wide with fear. She quickly scanned the area, noting the lack of proper cover, the scattered equipment, and the wounded sprawled across the mud. Without hesitation, she began organizing a safe corridor, directing soldiers in files of 4, instructing them to kneel when casualties were being moved, and coordinating suppressive fire and smoke canisters to shield the extraction route. Her voice, calm and commanding, cut through the chaos, instantly establishing order where panic had taken hold. She moved from soldier to soldier with practiced precision, checking airways, radial pulses, and bleeding while applying vented occlusive dressings, adjusting SAM splints, and securing tourniquets. Morphine was administered with steady hands, each injection measured, ensuring the critically wounded were stabilized for the long pull to safety. Amid the hail of rounds tearing through the canopy above, she communicated on the radio with the mortar team, authenticating coded fire missions and adjusting danger close coordinates with confidence. Every movement was deliberate, combining tactical awareness with medical expertise, her body and mind simultaneously shielding and saving the men around her. The platoon leader, crouched nearby, struggled to keep track of the situation, shouting orders that were drowned in the storm and gunfire. And Carter took the handset without pause, giving clear, concise commands for security and movement. She mapped the corridor across the wet tarps, assigning teams for litter carries, noting the location of each casualty, and making sure that no one moved without cover. Even as rounds peppered the edges of the clearing, she maintained the rhythm of the evacuation, timing lifts and pauses, guiding the team like a conductor of an orchestra where every note meant life or death. The soldiers began to trust her instinctively, following her instructions before she even repeated them, relying on her calm precision amid the bedlam. Each wounded soldier received care that was meticulous yet rapid. Carter sliding dressings, adjusting splints, and checking pulses while coordinating the next lift. She moved with the awareness of someone trained in special operations, understanding the flow of enemy fire and terrain, keeping her body low and protected while her eyes never left the task at hand. Smoke clouds rose. Suppressive fire held the enemy at bay. And through it all, she remained the steady center of the storm. In that chaos, fear gave way to focused action, and admiration for her skill spread among the soldiers, who began to see not just a medic, but a leader and guardian in the midst of fire. Years ago, Sergeant Emily Carter had walked through fire in Kandahar, a place where smoke and flame consumed everything in their path. During Operation Firelight, she had dragged 52 soldiers from a burning convoy, working for 48 relentless hours with only field bandages, a broken radio, and sheer determination. Her actions earned her the Distinguished Service Cross. Though the mission remained classified and her name buried beneath layers of secrecy, those who survived told whispers of a medic who refused to die, a ghost among heroes, moving through chaos with unwavering focus and skill. Now, as she moved through the jungle, subtle signs began to stir recognition among the pinned soldiers. One caught the faint black phoenix tattoo on her wrist, a mark he had only seen in photographs of the legendary medic from Operation Firelight. His eyes widened, disbelief washing over his face as he shared the sight with a comrade. And suddenly, the whispers of legends seemed real. Carter continued her work without pause. Her quiet, focused heroism, unchanged by fame or recognition. A living embodiment of the story they had thought was only myth. The contrast between her past and present actions only heightened the awe around her. Soldiers who had doubted her skills moments ago now felt the weight of history in her movements. The precision and calm that came from surviving what few could endure. Each measured step, each deliberate motion of her hands, spoke of experience forged in fire and silence. In that jungle, amid rain and gunfire, Emily Carter became both the living legend and the steady medic, proving that heroism could exist quietly yet leave an indelible mark on everyone who witnessed it. Even as enemy fire cracked through the canopy, no hesitation marred her actions. She moved from casualty to casualty, applying dressings, checking pulses, and coordinating movements, while maintaining a rhythm learned in the harshest conditions. The soldiers' disbelief and reverence mixed with urgency as they realized the ghost they had only heard about was real. Right there in the mud and rain, her presence transformed fear into focus, the legend walking among them with the same determination that had defined her from the very first mission. Sergeant Emily Carter moved with precise control as she prepared for her first run through the hail of enemy fire. Guiding litter teams carrying wounded soldiers along the corridor, she had mapped through mud and tangled roots. She coordinated with the mortar team via coded radio commands, authenticating each danger, close fire mission, and timing the bursts to suppress enemy positions just long enough for the wounded to advance safely. Smoke canisters hissed and bloomed into thick clouds, providing cover, while 2 squads moved in files of 4, kneeling when necessary. Each step choreographed to maximize protection. Her presence anchored the team, the rhythm of her commands creating order in the chaos as rounds stitched the edges of the corridor and mud sprayed from each impact. Every casualty required split-second judgment. A femur fracture here, an arterial bleed there, a chest wound that needed immediate stabilization. Carter applied vented occlusive dressings and reinforced tourniquets while sliding Sam's splints into place. Her hands steady despite the pounding rain and flying debris. Morphine was administered with calculated doses, each injection timed to manage pain while keeping patients alert enough to maintain vital signs during extraction. She moved from one injured soldier to the next, her eyes constantly scanning the tree line for threats, her mind orchestrating both medical care and tactical movement simultaneously. As she led the second run, staggered, suppressive fire kept the enemy at bay. The platoon firing controlled bursts, while she adjusted mortar targeting by the width of a palm and height of a leaf. Each lift of the litter was timed with enemy firing intervals, and the corridor moved like a living path. Soldiers instinctively kneeling when necessary, rising in sequence under her guidance. The injured were transferred from one team to another seamlessly, every handoff rehearsed and precise, while Carter's voice cut through the storm, steady and commanding. Even the most exhausted private followed her count without hesitation, trusting her judgment and the rhythm she imposed amidst life or death conditions. By the third and fourth runs, the physical strain was immense. Yet Carter's focus never wavered. Blood streaked her uniform, mud caked her boots, and her shoulders ached from carrying her pack and bracing litters. But her hands remained steady on dressings, tourniquet, and morphine lines. She constantly recalibrated the corridor, adjusting fire, smoke, and team placement to maintain the safe passage of each wounded soldier. Her leadership under fire inspired the platoon, instilling both confidence and awe, transforming chaos into disciplined movement, and ensuring every soldier survived another round through the storm. The rhythm of extraction became almost hypnotic, a balance of timing, kare, and tactical awareness. She reassessed wounds mid-move, secured dressings that loosened from jostling, and monitored arterial pulses while calculating next steps for both medical and tactical priorities. Each mortar adjustment, each lift, and each command was executed with precision, demonstrating her mastery of both battlefield medicine and field leadership. By the final runs, the soldiers followed her instinctively, the corridor functioning like an extension of her command, and the jungle, violent and chaotic, bowed to the rhythm of her skill and determination, marking a seamless rescue born of courage, discipline, and unwavering focus. The roar of UH-60 Blackhawk helicopters cut through the mist as they descended toward the clearing, rotor wash, whipping mud, and leaves into the air. Sergeant Emily Carter coordinated with the litter teams, signaling positions and guiding each casualty into the hoist lines with precise timing, ensuring no one was jostled or exposed to enemy fire. Soldiers watching her moved with a mixture of awe and relief, realizing that the quiet, determined medic who had led them through the storm was the same hero whose skill had saved countless lives. Each successful lift brought a wave of gratitude, the wounded grasping at her hands or shoulders in silent thanks as the helicopters rose into the sky. Captain Turner arrived at the edge of the extraction zone, boots sinking into the churned mud, and his gaze followed Carter's every movement with growing admiration, He acknowledged her leadership with a nod that carried respect and unspoken recognition. Knowing that the lives of the platoon had depended on her calm under fire, Carter, focused on the task, allowed herself a brief moment to notice the exhaustion and relief etched on the soldiers' faces. The pride and awe shared silently among them. Even amid the roar of rotors and the chaos of extraction, her presence anchored the team, a testament to skill, courage, and leadership earned through experience. The rotor wash tore through the clearing, scattering rain and debris, yet the hoist procedures were executed flawlessly. Each wounded soldier lifted safely into the Blackhawks. Carter directed the teams with measured gestures, checking each harness, stabilizing litters, and confirming communication with the pilots, ensuring that the operation proceeded without a single mishap. The soldiers who had feared for their lives now stood with newfound respect, witnessing the embodiment of quiet heroism in motion, and the weight of the day's battle shifted into admiration and relief. As the last casualty disappeared into the helicopter, the jungle fell silent, but for the fading thrum of the aircraft, leaving Carter standing tall, mud-streaked and weary, yet resolute. Having guided every man to safety, the emotional impact settled over the clearing, a mixture of relief, gratitude, and unspoken reverence for what had been accomplished. Captain Turner approached Carter, his expression softened by awe, and their brief exchange conveyed more than words could. A recognition of skill, courage, and sacrifice. The rescued soldiers looked on, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and appreciation, silently acknowledging the person who had led them through hell and back. In that moment, Carter's heroism was fully visible, no longer just a shadow of legend, but a tangible force that had carried them all through the storm. Sergeant Emily Carter sat at the far end of the hospital ward, watching soldiers she had carried through the jungle slowly recover, their faces pale but alive, their movements hesitant yet determined. She reached into her duffel and touched the dog tags she kept for the fallen. Feeling the weight of each name and the lives she had been able to save, Private Ellis approached, nervous and eager, and she shared the lesson that true courage is not measured in medals or recognition, but in staying when people need you most, even when it is hard or frightening. Her voice was calm, steady, and filled with quiet authority, leaving the young medic with an understanding far deeper than any textbook could convey. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee, a sharp contrast to the mud and smoke of the jungle. Yet the memory of that mission lingered in Carter's mind. She observed her colleagues laughing softly, comparing scars and exaggerating stories, and felt a subtle sense of pride in their survival. Knowing her actions had made it possible, the quiet nature of her heroism had allowed others to shine, yet the impact of her decisions rippled outward, shaping the way the soldiers thought, moved, and believed in one another. In that reflective moment, Carter embodied humility and strength, a steady presence whose influence would endure far beyond the walls of the hospital, even in the soft light of the ward. Her commitment remained palpable, a reminder that heroism often goes unnoticed and uncelebrated. She allowed herself a brief breath of relief, acknowledging that she had carried not just bodies, but hope, and that her quiet determination had made a difference that could never be measured in accolades. Private Ellis listened intently, absorbing the lesson that courage is rooted in responsibility, compassion, and persistence. Carter's reflection created a resonance that reached beyond herself, leaving an impression of quiet heroism and enduring influence on everyone who witnessed her presence. Sergeant Emily Carter stepped out of the hospital into the pale morning light, her boots sinking slightly into the damp earth, and the black phoenix tattoo on her wrist caught the first rays of sun. Soldiers and new recruits paused, watching her move with quiet authority, their eyes reflecting respect and awe for the medic who had guided them through chaos and fire. Each step she took seemed to ripple through the ranks, her courage and calm leaving an imprint that would be remembered long after the moment passed. The narrator reflected that true heroes carry the weight of those they save, their impact measured not in medals or applause, but in lives touched and hope restored. The jungle of memories and mud had been replaced by a quiet morning, yet the lessons lingered in the hearts of the soldiers she had led and saved. Carter moved with the poise of someone who had borne the heaviest burdens without seeking recognition. Her presence itself, a symbol of endurance and selfless courage. New recruits straightened instinctively, absorbing a living example of leadership and sacrifice, while the veterans nodded subtly, acknowledging what had been accomplished. In that light, the legend of Sergeant Emily Carter lived on, not in loud stories or ceremonies, but in the lasting influence of quiet heroism that inspired everyone who witnessed it.